Are Siege suppressors realistic? Growing up on stealth shooters like Splinter Cell and Sniper Ghost Warrior, I was always fascinated with silent guns. The fact that you can shoot someone in a room full of people and no one would hear it gave my little mind such excitement. But how realistic are these movies and Siege when it comes to suppressors? I decided I need to know as much as I could about them. Now, before 1902, suppressors didn't exist. However, HP Maxim was already working on making that change. His passion for making automobiles quieter would be advantageous for him. He would use that same technology in suppressors. Smarter Every Day actually shows what it looks like on the inside of a suppressor when a bullet is shot through it. Now, the internals of a suppressor all vary on how they look, but they all behave the same way. The gases get trapped and dispersed throughout the suppressor's internals before exiting. This makes it so the gas's energy is reduced before it leaves the suppressor, making the shot quieter. This also reduces the recoil when firing your weapon. Looking at Siege, when you put suppressors on, your weapon recoil does the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do. The recoil is supposed to be lessened. Instead, it's increased, making it harder to control your gun. When I played Siege every day, I didn't run the suppressor because of the massive recoil disadvantage. Now, I think we can all agree on how good suppressors sound in Siege. But how do they actually sound? Wrong clip. I mean, one is a whisper while the other one still makes your eyes water. I'll put this into perspective for you. From 163 to 171 decibels are the sound of guns. This is above extremely loud little baby crying and thunder booms, and even above jet takeoff. Now, a suppressor reduces the decibels of a gun roughly between 20 to 35 decibels. I'll take the quietest firearm and the most generous sound reduction, 128 decibels. That is still above thunder and a chainsaw. I don't know if you guys ever seen a silent chainsaw before other than this one, but even with the suppressor, guns are still pretty dang loud. They do help mitigate hearing loss, which was one of the intended purposes of this invention. However, if you are looking for silky smooth quiet action, you will have to use a .22 caliber. It's really small but really quiet with suppressors. I think Siege uses the sound of a .22 suppressor for all of its calibers with how quiet all of its guns are.
7 bullets. Nice.
There's another option for more suppression. It's called modular suppressors. It's basically Legos for guns. You just screw on some more suppressor tubes and you make it longer and quieter. However, as you can see, for the most part, guns other than the .22 apparently won't be as quiet as once thought. In Siege, you get all the attachments for free, but in real life, suppressors are sort of expensive. They usually range between $350 to $1,500, plus a mandatory $200 federal tax. Now, I really like shooting at the range, and
Did you mean to do that? Yeah.
For the longest, I thought suppressors were illegal because I never see anyone have them. I later found out it's due to the process to get them. The TLDR for the process works like this: a lot of paperwork, a lot of waiting, and with patience, YouTube can own one of the coolest attachments ever made. Oh yeah. Of course, if you live in the 42 states that it's legal in. I remember I would always have a friend that knew random things, and he would tell me, "Did you know that suppressors actually make the bullet shoot faster?" In my mind at the time, I thought he was lying because, well, I thought the way silencers worked was that the slower the bullet, the quieter. But indeed, suppressors do have a slight effect on velocity. Suppressors usually increase velocity between 10 to 20 feet per second. Now, it's not a lot, but it's important because we are talking about Siege here, right? When you put a suppressor on in Siege, your damage tanks hard. I thought for the longest this made sense to my prior theory. However, that is not the case. Siege just chops it off for no reason, right? Well, my conclusion is that it's due to balancing for the game. But if it were realistic, and this is a long shot, the damage drop-off could be caused by subsonic rounds, which are shot at a slower velocity. Another neat thing suppressors do is reduce the muzzle flash. Now, we're not going to go into depth with Siege's muzzle mechanics due to my findings. I mean, just look at this bullet. I've never even noticed that. At the end of the day, this game is a comp FPS, and I'm glad I didn't have to deal with Tarkov muzzle flashes. That game actually gives me eye pains. Light machine guns, baby! Currently, Siege is in LMG meta. People have swapped out the traditional rifles for something a little heavier. Now, most people don't think about the suppressor that is on one of these guns. However, you should. The suppressor that you can attach to this LMG would be completely destroyed in one game due to how trigger happy this community is. Now, when you are having fun shooting a suppressed gun, they can actually overheat. If you shoot too many rounds too fast, this can occur. Now, most professional suppressors are made really well. For a suppressor to fail, you would need to breach the 1000-degree Fahrenheit mark. Sounds like a really high number to hit, right? But for every round that you shoot, your suppressor will rise 7 to 10 degrees. Each 30-round mag can make your suppressor heat up between 200 to 300 degrees. That was a saw melting through a suppressor. Most people will never run into this issue. That is, if you are not an LMG enjoyer. Obviously, as you know, suppressors don't melt in Siege. That'd be actually pretty cool to see though. You ever play a video game where you want to buy a suppressor and they say, "Hey, here's this soda can and it just works"? Well, that's not realistic. However, this guy did get an oil filter to suppress his gun, which is interesting. I would strongly urge you not to mess around with non-professional suppressors for legal reasons and safety concerns, of course. All I gotta say is that people are ambitious. There was a lot of stuff that I left out that I didn't feel like you wanted to know in a video titled What It Is. However, if you are still here, suppressors originally were marketed toward hunters in sporting good magazines. The history of suppressors and why they are so hard to get is really interesting as well, but with that being said, suppressors in Siege are not realistic at all. Siege reduces the damage, gives you more recoil, doesn't overheat. The only thing they do right is muzzle flash, sorta, and dampen the sound, but obviously way too much dampening is going on. If suppressors were realistic in Siege, no one would use any other attachment and the game would just be a silent match every time. C4. Alright, he's dead. And this guy's riding a pipe. Bro, like,
Crazy.
this guy actually just brought a whole pipe down, bro. Like,